right, good afternoon, everybody. Not all at once, please, just calm yourselves. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. There we go, that's much better. Thank you all for coming out to another Tech Tuesday that is presented by Regions. I am going to try to condense everything that I want to share with you all. It has been an absolutely stellar past few weeks. Just quick show of hands, who all in here was able to make it out to South by Southwest? Awesome. So yeah, I am terrible at the whoops, but whoop whoop. But seriously, so I mean, we probably had about 15 folks that were out at South by Southwest. And I encourage you, if you haven't been, keep it on your radar. For those who don't know, South by Southwest, it started as a music festival. It kind of evolved into really spring break for people who are in tech. And you have about 50,000 people who descend on Austin for those 2 weeks, and it is the epicenter of all things interactive, technology, education, you name it. And for the past 3 years, Birmingham has really been showing up in bigger and better ways. And it went from people now expecting us to have a presence out there, whereas 3 years ago, we were so removed from the ecosystem, from tech, people thought we were from Birmingham, England. I kid you not. I wish that was a joke. But now that we are in these conversations, Birmingham is on the radar. And so, having folks to go out there and represent the ecosystem and the state at large is it represents a significant shift and a step in the right direction. So just wanted to shout out those who were able to come out, and then also encourage you all, if you haven't been, to keep it on the radar. And that kind of ties into why this wonderful individual is up on the stage with me as well. So you got South by in Austin, but we got something that's a bit cooler called Sloss Tech. And that is a conference that we've been doing, I think we're going on 7 years now. And it's not just a platform and an opportunity for us to celebrate the local ecosystem, Birmingham, Huntsville, Montgomery, Mobile, you name it, but it's also a beacon or a magnet to bring in people from outside the ecosystem, outside the state, who for whatever reason might not have an awareness about what we're trying to build here in Birmingham and across the state. And so one of the ways that we were thinking about how do we evolve this, right? How do we truly position this as an economic asset? One of the ideas was a pitch competition. And so I want to turn it over to Mary Wallace, because she has been a tremendous partner, a thought partner, an advocate in this work, and a critical piece of the infrastructure. And that is not hyperbole, right? Because if you think about Birmingham and the state a generation ago, we were leading as it related to finance, right? We were a banking hub and still are in a lot of respects, but we had 4 top 50 banks. And I think it was a missed opportunity for us to not be in the conversation around FinTech, right? Financial innovation. And so here we are now, positioned for transformative change in a few industries. And we have the opportunity now, thanks to partners like the Regions Foundation and Mary Wallace and Brandy, their entire ecosystem. And now we can say, well, what does it look like for us to position ourselves ahead of the wave to take advantage of that transformation that we know will be taking place? And so just the pitch competition is one of the many ways that we can do that, but it's one of the most visible and I think one of the most impactful. So Mary Wallace, I know it was a lot, but if there's anything that you wanted to lift up and say, but I at least wanted to say in front of everybody, thank you.
Thank you. Well, the Regions Foundation is so proud to partner with Dion and the rest of the Tech Birmingham team. Small businesses and entrepreneurs are the heartbeat of our community, and this pitch competition is really going to bring that to light. And I hope to see everybody there. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Round of applause, please, for Mary Wallace and Regions, the Regions Foundation. I did not do that, just so you all know. I think I kept Mary Wallace too long back here. Apologies, Mary Wallace. Also, the perks of Tech Birmingham membership is that you get insights and access and deals that the general public does not have. And so an hour ago, you should have received an email for discounts to early bird tickets for Sloss Tech. and that will remain in effect, I think, until April 1st. So go ahead and get them now, especially if you are considering the VIP ticket, because those things fly like hotcakes. Again, just as you're talking to folks about Tech Birmingham membership, that's one of the values that comes with it, among many other things. But we wanted to make sure that we were honoring the folks and the organizations that make this work possible. Clearly, we cannot do it without you all. So make sure you check your email for that. Jared and Anna, you all are familiar with them. If you have any questions, feel free to pull them or pull me after this. And also wanted to give a quick shout out to Digital Motion. We're finally putting these online now, which is, packed house. So super excited to see this. But a lot of times people might be out of town or across town. Folks were asking us, well, how do we get our hands on this content? So we can finally now put it online thanks to Digital Motion. They've been partnering with us on a number of events and initiatives. We actually have another one coming up that we do in partnership with Birmingham InfraGard and Central Alabama ISSA called the Southeast Cybersecurity Summit. It's kind of an evolution of what we used to do in the past. Alabama Cyber Now, that then evolved into Cyber Now Summit. And now in partnership with those two aforementioned organizations, we put on the Southeast Cybersecurity Summit. That is going to be taking place in early April. So again, feel free to check the website for that. And also, let's see, I feel like there was one more thing. Anna, where are you? Was there one more thing that we wanted to lift up? We're good. Awesome. Well, in that case, I just want to at least set the stage for the conversation in the panel around today. I won't steal the thunder, but a lot of this emerged out of conversations that Jared was having with a new member organization, Synechron. So obviously, AI is at the forefront of a lot of the conversation. And a lot of people, of course, are rightfully so interested in how it's going to impact not just the organizations, but our daily lives. And I think through the lens of Birmingham, what does that mean from a financial, from a banking, from a FinTech perspective? So if you all would, please help me welcome Brandy Miller to the stage to introduce the board, and we'll kick off the conversation.
You guys can come on up. I'm going to let them do the hard work and introduce themselves, Dion.
Thank you.
Yeah, come on up. And we'll do a mic check. Everybody can hear me okay? All right, great. Look at all these fun faces, too. It is a full house. I'm glad everybody's here joining us at our house, Regions. I love when we host here, and I love all the fun things we do. All right, let's do a mic check on everybody. What we'll do is, you good?
Hello? Nope. Not good. Now I'm good.
Martha's good. Double check you
Hello?
guys on the end.
There we go.
Okay, cool.
Hello, check. Yeah.
For those of you that I haven't met, which I feel like I've met a lot of you because I'm a talker and I talked to a lot of people earlier, I'm Brandy Miller and I oversee our digital sales group here at the bank. And fun little fact, Martha is my neighbor. Had no idea she was going to be on the panel today. Yep, our kids play sports together, and I'm actually picking her son up this afternoon. So
True story. True story.
we had no idea we were going to be involved in this panel, but that is a fun little fact. So what I'll do is just allow them to introduce themselves briefly. Martha, we'll start with you and just go.
Sure. I'm Martha Underwood, CEO and founder of Prism, the digital vault that makes transfer of wealth seamless at end of life.
Hi everyone, I am Anantha. I head AI capabilities for Synechron across North America.
Hello, this is Sampath, Sam as well. So I'm a lead AI engineer at Synechron. Been with Synechron for the last 2 years, so good to be here.
So my voice carries, so I got to be really tactful with how I do this. Brian Alvarez Bailey, CEO and co-founder of Allison. We build AI solutions for smaller banks and credit unions. We're also a MasterCard portfolio company.
Awesome. Thank you guys for introducing yourselves. And we'll get started with a quick round robin. One thing I want to note is that picture's old. My eyesight has declined on me over the years, so forgive me for having to use my glasses here to make sure I'm getting these questions right for my panelists. Let's get started with a quick round robin, and we'll start with you, Brian, on this question and go around and give everybody a quick opportunity to answer it. What specific financial challenge is AI uniquely positioned to solve in your area of focus, and what excites you about that?
So to be clear, I'm a general curmudgeon, like I'm bearish on everything. I don't like using the term AI because I think that there's a general disconnect between what folks like these smart, intelligent folks know to be AI and what the general public is. I talk about accelerated learning, things like that, or algorithmic learning, I guess is the other little buzz phrase. But for us in specific, so Allison really serves the common good of back office banking operations. So a bank like Regions, your customers tend to rely on a certain level of care and a certain level of service. What they don't see is what goes on the back end of that, right? You've got thousands of people working hours and hours and hours to make sure that deposits are right, making sure that loans are available, things like that. So what Allison essentially is doing is automating the brunt of that work. And so with algorithmic learning, what we've tried to do, at least in terms of what the banks that we serve will allow us to do, because banks are very not into AI, or at least in that sense. But what we try to do is to try to make it as seamless of a transition as possible so that a human can make a decision, right? Like ultimately we want humans to be the arbiter of right, wrong, and we fail at that sometimes. But ultimately we just want to use tools, hammers, nails, things like that to make more informed decisions. And I think that's what we're doing with Allison. So for us, I even say over the last month with the advent of a concept called MCP, Model Context Protocol. I can go into what that actually means, but
that might be over my head, but keep going.
Sure. Like you say, my picture is old too, my eyes are terrible, and my ears, so there you go. But I think for us, we're most excited about the abilities for us to take an intellectual concept and translate it into something that we can put into the hands of a customer. Because I think ultimately, with any startup, whether they're FinTech or not, like the goal is to solve a real problem. And if you're not solving a real problem, you're just kind of treading water. And over the last month for us, because technology has made the ability for you to take idea and generate it, within an hour, we've been able to at least offer solutions to our bank customers that they otherwise would not be able to access quickly. So I think that's really where the most exciting part for me comes from.
I love that. Sampa?
Yeah, so for me, I think mostly there are two keywords. One is enhanced customer experience, and second is automation. I think both the words sound like, it's old school, but we have been doing this, but with forefront of AI. I think when I talk to the clients, they want to make sure we use AI to do this better in terms of when we say enhanced customer experience, I've been working on building chatbots for people to, make it a better accessible thing within the bank, outside the bank as well. And we are able to do it more, better way using AI as well. I've been using a lot of cloud and non-cloud open source and all of that, right? So, and automation, I think for me, I think I've been seeing a lot of banks are trying to, let's say document intelligence or, where we want to make sure we automate a lot of the things that have been doing it manually from copying things from the documents or maybe migrating a few things from legacy to new tech, etc. So those are a few common things I think I would like to share. Yeah.
Good.
I just want to start by slightly disagreeing with what you said.
Oh, I love a panel when we disagree. This is fantastic.
So
Let's go.
it's not that banks are not into AI. They're very much into it because there is a lot of productivity gains to be had. There is a lot of efficiency improvements to be had. So that's something that everybody wants. Lower costs, better, let's say, customer service, better productivity. But the problem comes in is around risk allocation. Do you truly understand what is the risk that you're taking over or taking by implementing AI. Or let's say you have a search system that is, you can query through a large swath of documents and it's coming back with answers. And right now you had deterministic search where you type in a keyword and the system gives you like hundreds of documents. And people had their way of going through that and finding that information that they want. But when you introduce generative AI, it is taking away some of that thought process that people normally would apply. And in doing so, make some assumptions that the person who is doing the search is not making. And because of those assumptions, the system might put a completely wrong document, or let's say an earlier version of the same document in the forefront, and people might take a decision based on it. So that is risk. You need to be able to assess and understand what is the impact of that. And unless you have a way of quantifying it, a way of saying, yep, this is okay and this is not okay, you would be hesitant to sort of jump in headfirst to that. So everybody is very interested in AI. It's just what is the impact of it? Because you're going to reduce, let's say, taking the code migration example, you can, let's say, build an application, what used to take you about a year, you can do that probably, let's say, in 3 months using generative systems. What is the risk of that? Did the system actually implement every single bit of the requirement? How are you validating it? How are you testing it? So unless you have these guardrails and these governance processes in place, the AI system won't see a lot of success. It won't see a lot of large-scale adoption in any bank, for that matter. It doesn't matter what size of the bank is. So that is where the gap truly comes up. Because if you're a startup, it's much easier because you go in with this mindset of move fast and break things, which is perfectly fine. But for a bank, whatever size it is, it really can't do that because you have regulators breathing down your neck, saying, oh, you screwed up here, or you made this mistake. And it is the difference between ending up saving millions of dollars versus paying millions of dollars in fines. So when you're stuck in the middle, it's a very difficult spot to be. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And that's kind of where understanding the landscape of what risk you're undertaking and understanding why the whole ecosystem is the way it is matters. And that's where the adoption is a little slower than what you would see in, I don't know, like an Uber or an Airbnb, because they're happy to deploy that models like 50 times a day. You can't really expect a bank to do that. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where that difference comes in. And I totally get and agree with him when we say AI, it means different things to different people.
Yes.
For a bank, it means different things. For, let's say, a consultant like us, it's going to mean something else. Somebody who's not very much into it, it would mean something else. To someone, it just might mean like Skynet, Terminator and things. So all of the above.
That's right. Martha, what are your thoughts?
So for me, and I think you're going to hear this theme throughout this panel, is simplification of complex problems, right? So one of the things that we solve is whenever a loved one passes, you have several documents that you need to find and put together to provide to a bank in order to get access to those funds, right? And that's a complex problem. And so for us with AI, how do we simplify that? How do we scrape all of that data and pull out what's essential, what the banks need for us to be able to get those monies into the hands of the beneficiaries quickly, right? It's also about automation. How can we automate that process where someone doesn't have to come into a bank to be able to get those proceeds? And then seamless client experience, right? Because people don't live in the same areas anymore. Long gone are the days that grandma lives down the street, so that I can just go to her bank and say, okay, grandma died, here's the death certificate, let me go ahead and get the funds because I'm a beneficiary. And so during a stressful time, when someone has transitioned life, you're already in a state of, grief. And so to add on the extra complexity of the administrative side of death, which is where we play, is where we want to make that really seamless for the banks as well as the consumer, right? Because Prism, for those who don't know, is a digital vault like the digital evolution of the safety deposit box, with the added benefit of aggregating all of your financial accounts, bringing in your real estate assets and valuables, and then also securely storing your documents, locking it down, sharing it with family and friends, and controlling the privacy of who sees what and when, right? Time controlled, because you don't know when an emergency will hit. And instead of having to go to someone's house to find all of that information, you can go to the vault and then talk to that vault, or get information quickly out of that vault that you might not have been able to if you had to do it manually. So we're excited about the ability to take this complex problem and simplify it for banks and for consumers.
I love that. Let's play off of that a little bit and talk about Allison more and what you are offering with your solution. So talk about some specific advantages that you've seen in the community banking space, right? And what you think are big like efficiencies and gains that you've seen through the AI technology solutions.
Sure. Well,
Knowing that we still have a definition difference here. So.
sure. Well, I think this is a good opportunity to sort of extend that out a little bit. So to Martha's point, you're dealing with these complex situations where a loved one passes away. So someone that you truly care about. That's not just a burden on you, but that's also a burden on the banks or institutions in which you work with, because ultimately they can only do what they can do armed with the right information. So if you don't know what that is, if you don't know what that criterion is, how then do you meet that criterion? So so now you're talking about the human aspect of it, right? Just the levels of stress. In the ways that we've seen this being successful has been, so going back to the earlier point about risk, when you are a startup, a bank can view you as a higher risk in terms of a vendor relationship because you are a startup, right? You were, you didn't exist the day before, but now you do, right? So it's like, well, how do I know you're going to be here a week from now? How do I know you're going to be here a year from now? So we found a problem where we were serving a couple of banks, and we discovered an even deeper issue that they were having with their payments provider, MasterCard, which is actually how we became a MasterCard portfolio company, because we said, hey, you're having an issue with taking information that you have to deliver to them. How about we create something that automatically will pull it from its source and then deliver it to MasterCard in a secure way? If we did that for you, how much would that be worth, right? And that was our initial bet. What we didn't realize was MasterCard found out what we were doing. We're like, well, wait a minute. Like, that needs to be our product. I said, you know what? You're right.
Well played.
I agree with you. It's such a good idea. I'm glad you had it. But I think for us, it was really, again, finding the problem of, this super conservative, super risk averse entity who wants to provide their customer with the best service. Because despite what anyone may believe, that's what your bank wants to do, right? Your bank wants to keep you as a customer. Right. And ultimately, there are technical roadblocks to prevent them from doing that in the ways that they want to. And it's the banks like Regions that actually support a lot of the banks that Allison serves, because Regions is considered more to be a regional bank. We kind of serve, the mom and pop banks, the ones that we see on the corner, right? Like those are our customers. But when you have a larger bank that supports these smaller banks, it becomes easier for them to be open to the idea of adopting technology. It becomes easier for them to enter into pilots with startups that they otherwise would not work with, because they feel like there's a trust factor with this larger entity. So again, for us, it was really just a matter of taking a process that was just really cumbersome and really time consuming for a human, because that's ultimately what it boils down to. And it made it easier for that human to do more with less. And ultimately that then, drove the value of what our initial product was, because we didn't launch as an automation system or a back office tool system. We originally were a ledger, a vault, if you will, for FinTech companies that wanted to work with banks. And then ultimately we just saw a problem that we could solve, and that was the real sort of attribute of the company. And we went towards it. But it really boils down to, that being able to prove out to the bank on a small scale that you're reducing their risk, and then they then become more, the appetite opens up a little bit more, so.
Love that. So let's take it from emerging technology trends, what you're solving for, and let's dig into the day-to-day. So Sampath, I'm going to go to you next. And working directly in this space, talk to us about just what your day looks like, your daily task, what you're trying to achieve, how you work and partner, and explain that a little bit more to us.
Sure. So I think my day begins with fun and energetic talking to my team. So I'm not sure if it's on. Okay.
I think you are.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So where since I'm a lead AI engineer, I talk to my team in the morning, taking the good things or they were able to solve in the day, and then also plan for the next few days or for that day as well. But after that, since we are in consulting, we talk to different clients, related to their problem solving, and and that includes anywhere from the ideation of what we are trying to solve. It could be something like building a chatbot. Hey, we have heard AI can do this. Can you help us build this chatbot, in our company? And then we discuss about the ideation of what are the possibilities, and discuss about the technologies that are available in the bank. And also at Synechron, we have something called FinLabs, so which is we have some accelerators that we build ready to deploy kind of solution where we showcase on, so this is what we have built at our company using these technologies, and you can bring it to you, or maybe showcase this at your convenience, or or we can show different things of technologies that we have built. And I think other than that, I think it will be a lot of problem solving, just hands-on things, where currently I'm working for a client, maybe doing a legacy code migration, where they have something that they have built years ago, and they wanted to use more modern languages and other things. So I work with them on making it happen and doing hands-on as well. So yeah, I think that will be most part of my day. It's consulting.
And when I said I talked a lot earlier to everybody, I think they solved about 15 of my own problems prior to this conversation. So I appreciate you giving me that free capability before the meeting. I imagine that you face a lot of challenges in this space and what you do too. What do you see your biggest kind of hurdle working in the space today?
I think I would say something which Anantha have touched before is regulatory space, as we deal with a lot of banks.
Yeah.
So, and as a consulting company, we have access to a lot of these resources, or maybe the cutting edge technologies that are released in the market. Maybe a month ago, we have that leverage to go ahead and try things and prove the value. Hey, this is what it can do, where it can maybe add value to you or save the cost or time, etc. But when we take it to the bank, sometimes they don't have that technology available, or they are not ahead of the space, right? And we understand why. But that's one of the challenges, I think, I would say, is the technology gap between where the industry is and where the banks are. And I think it's slowly growing, and I'm just glad to see a lot of banks are adopting cloud technologies, and I myself have been working on AWS and Azure, using those technologies or to build the solutions. So yeah, that's something that I would say.
Yeah, good answer. I figured you might touch on that. Emerging capabilities for sure. So this is for anybody who wants to jump in. You guys feel free. You often hear about how AI is going to impact the workforce, right? There's a lot in the news and a lot of just kind of water cooler chat about that in different industries and organizations. So let's talk about your thoughts on that, and just elaborate where you think the future 5 years from now, what that will look like. Who wants to go first? Because I know y'all all have thoughts on this topic.
I can jump in. I think that a lot of people are afraid to embrace AI because they think it's going to replace them, right?
Yeah.
And I think there was a point made earlier that AI is just a tool, right? everyone in here has deep institutional knowledge about financials, and banking and financial industry. I think what AI will do is just help enhance that. So some of the manual tasks that's out there that can be done, that's redundant, that's where we can leverage AI. But I think we will see the positions and the institutional knowledge kind of evolve into, like, from a data privacy perspective, because there's been a lot of talk about that, like data analysts around looking at the AI LLMs to say, has something been compromised? Has my data been compromised? Like, what does that look like? And have some watchdogs there. But because you have that institutional knowledge, you know what to look for, like what information shouldn't be in there that is in there, right? So I think that we should all be embracing it, because if not, you're going to get left behind and not necessarily be afraid of it, because it does mean something different to everyone else. It's, what are you comfortable with? And the only way to get comfortable with it is to use it and to play with it and to research and to read about it and to go to think tanks and to talk to other people that's using it. So I think that we just need to shift our thought process around it, and how can we apply our skills leveraging AI instead of thinking about it as a replacement for us, and then create the positions that you feel comfortable in leveraging the technology.
Yeah, good feedback.
Well, it's top of mind for me. I did a webinar yesterday with FICO, and toward the end of the webinar, someone said something to the effect of, well, I'm concerned I'm going to lose my job. And I had to go look this up because I'm just pedantic and a psychopath. But in the 1890s, this was a real thing in the U.S. There was a concern that the advent of the typewriter would basically make it so that people wouldn't want to write anything. Like the pen and paper, gone. We'll never use it again. Case in point. And I was just like, this couldn't have been a real thing. So then, of course, I go down the rabbit hole, and I started getting on YouTubes, and please don't, because there are sides of YouTube you just don't want to be on. And you just see all these things where they talk about, this was a real thing. So think about that for a second. The typewriter. Does anyone even here own a typewriter? So I do, but for different reasons. But the fact that I'm the only human being in here in 2025 that owns a typewriter, and there was a point in this country where people thought it was going to kill the pencil and paper industry. So again, if you just sort of just take human history and just human nature, and you just ask yourself the question, do I feel this, again, is a tool, or is this going to replace me? You've got real, experience as a person and real experience in the domain. You're just using newer tools to be more effective. And if you look at it that way, if you say, hey, this is not automation and technology is not replacing me, it's enhancing me. If you reframe it in that using that sort of mindset, I think you then acquiesce to the idea of adopting newer technologies.
Brian, I have a typewriter.
You do, really?
I keep it in Miami, but I have it.
I wasn't going to age myself, but that's how I learned to type, was like a real old school typewriter before you people had just computers to type on.
Well, I feel better now because
We won't go into that, Brandy.
I felt super lonely for a little while. I was like, wow, nobody owns a typewriter here.
We have
I learned
typewriters.
typing on a typewriter, so
Me too.
I'm very, very aggressive with the keyboard because of that. Because I hit the button.
You know what?
hard.
You strike me as somebody that would just be super aggressive.
I mean,
That's
help
where I
a
started as
friend
well.
out who had learned to type on a typewriter, right? All right,
Oh,
you
there we
computer
go. There we
folks
go.
and iPhones and iPads. Yeah. It's okay. We're all in it together. Thoughts about where we're going with this? I said we have to get off the typewriter topic. We'll digress.
So I have read this somewhere where, like the similar lines that you said, like, where AI is going to replace jobs of people. But they said people are going to replace with people, but with people who are familiar with AI.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that caught me. Oh, right. This is really true, right? Because let's say you have a team of people, and your manager read something, or maybe you say, hey, we can do this thing using this tool that I've seen, using AI or LLM, whatnot, right? And and suddenly you want to know what is the value that brings in, and you can reduce the time of doing this from 100 hours to maybe 20 minutes. Right, and I'm just exaggerating things, but and it is possible as well, right? Then we look for people, so who can do this, like what kind of technology that we need, or people who can do this, right? And that's where, people, or one of the team knows, oh, I know to do this using Python or maybe some tool, right? And that's where, okay, so we need this kind of people more, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's where I would like to, add that phrase. I think is very relevant, and there are a lot of tools available, or maybe people or who can educate us, how to use these tools, so like using AI and other things. But I think that's something that which really struck in my head. Yeah.
Do you have thoughts on the topic?
Yeah, actually, I was going to take the example of the industrial era, but you seem to have taken that. So every time there has been a monumental shift in the way we operate or the way we look at things, like the invention of the car. Like everybody was really worried that there are not going to be any horses left. But of course, we have less number of horses, but we have a few of them around. The idea is that the belief was that, again, to his point, there's going to be a whole lot of jobs that will be lost. But in reality, what happened was that there were a lot more jobs created. Basically, what we were talking to earlier, and the reason why these kinds of fears come in is because we tend to look at the past and try and predict what the future is supposed to look like. But in nearly all cases, that's not going to help, because if looking at, let's say, what happened with cars and typewriters and bicycles and so on, how has the world changed? Our interpretation is going to be that we will lose jobs. We only see one side of it, but we don't see that holistic, larger picture. And that's exactly what is going to be the next set of things, because there is absolutely no way that any government is going to say that, or any time in the near future, that they will say that an output from a language model or any AI system is the go-to solution. So if that were to get to that stage, then you will probably say that we don't need somebody to manage this side of business or that side of business, and AI is going to take care of that. But so long as there is risk or any kind of decision making is involved, humans will always be there. And that's because you would really want to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and say, this makes sense and this doesn't, or I agree with the system or I disagree with the system. Even with companies that are all into AI, imagine your Googles or your Airbnbs or Lyft or Uber, even they have humans who are actually trying to finally make that decision. So there is going to be jobs, it's going to be slightly different compared to what it used to be. So you wouldn't have to spend all day sitting and writing code. Instead, it's going to be a system that does some parts of the work and you just review it and agree or disagree with that system. Or if you're somebody who is looking through a bunch of documents to actually verify if something matches in your example, a whole lot of that can be automated. And the button to either click approve or deny on a claim or some request is going to happen a lot faster. What used to take a month might take a couple of days. That is the improvement you will see, rather than saying we don't need somebody to click that button, because that is not a world that we will likely are to see in decades or even hundreds of years, really.
Let's keep elaborating on that. Talk about success metrics, right? As you've gone through AI implementations, working in your own respective spaces, what are you calling a success, right? What are your measurements? How are you making sure that you are getting that effectiveness? And to your point, we still have some balance of making sure we have some manual oversight or review of things. So Martha, we'll start with you, and anybody jump in as well.
So we measure like time reduction of an advisor or a banker looking for documents, right? How can we reduce the amount of time they spend looking for a document to be able to transfer those assets? How quickly can we transfer those assets from an account holder to a beneficiary? Like, what does it look like today versus using Prism and automating that, and how quickly can we get that right? We're also tracking like cross-generation engagement with the vault. Like how many of your beneficiaries are actually using the vault, or trusted people looking in there and sharing information, right? Because that's important, because all of that information is needed when you transition account, and the banks need that information. So we try to keep up with those metrics. And if those metrics align and we can save people time to get the money and also time for the bank to be able to process it, then that's success for us.
Excellent. Other thoughts?
So for Allison, it's twofold, right? There are internal metrics and there are external metrics. So external metrics being metrics that we measure for customer success, meaning how more efficient are we making our bank customers' lives? And one of the ways to measure that is deposits processed, right? So part of our software, we've got digital banking software that allows a bank to manage their deposits, right? Effectively bridging the CRM concept of customer relationship with actual treasury services. So in the past, things like making sure that an account that was flagged for potential fraud would have taken a week to verify and vet. With Allison, they can do that in minutes, right? They can see a list of every condition that was triggered and then say, yes, this is a true fraud or this is not true fraud, move on, and keep going. What that does for the bank's customer, then, they're not left in limbo when something happens and get triggered, going back to Martha's point. Now, internally, I think that's the one I'm more excited about. So I mentioned a concept called Model Context Protocol earlier. I'll kind of explain what that essentially means. So everyone here has a phone, I'm guessing. Imagine a world where, irrespective of your phone being an Android or an iPhone or whatever, there was a universal charger, right? That's essentially what the concept of MCP is putting forth. The idea that you can take an AI agent, irrespective of the business vertical, and wrap it around your application, giving a specific context. So you create your agent, you say, I'm going to connect this agent to a CRM that pulls sales data. And you have a natural conversation with that agent to tell it exactly what you want to do. And so for us, this opens up a whole new bucket because, again, our customers are very, very risk adverse. And they are not keen to allow us to experiment and essentially build fast and break stuff in their environments. So what it now does is we can take real data that actually comes from the bank and keep it completely isolated from potential security vulnerabilities. And we can do whatever we want with it, right? Because ultimately it's all serialized and we can't access it. But we can build fraud scenarios. We can run fraud simulations. We can run automation simulations. So we can do all these levels of experimentation without ever compromising the business of our customer, which then we just turn around and we show them anyway. We say, hey, remember last month we saved your loan officers X amount of time. Guess what? We did a recent experiment. We think we can even triple that, right? And so it allows us to both not talk out of our behinds, because I don't like doing that too much, but it also, again, potentially puts buttresses around innovation so that we can try to create new products and we can create new opportunities for our bank customers. So that's what I'm really excited about.
Love it. Synechron?
Yeah. So whenever you talk about adoption of AI and other systems, one thing that everybody wants to do and does at different degrees of success is measuring it. In today's date, every bank that Synechron works with has adopted, let's say, GitHub Copilot as their development platform. And every bank that I speak to has a consistent message to say that we're not seeing the productivity improvement that we thought we were going to get. Because, we have Copilot, it's supposed to write code for us, but folks aren't using it. Or even when folks use it, most of the code the system, or let's say Copilot generated, you're going to have to adjust and make adjustments and change. So it's about how you use that system.
Yeah.
And the idea of measurement comes not by saying how many people have access to something, but how they're using that something. Again, going back to the charger idea, because everybody can like essentially share the same charger. You can just replace one with the other and be able to get that same quality. And that's where measuring, let's say, if you're looking at software engineering projects, measuring something like first pass yield, that is a better thing to do rather than saying how many people have access to something. For example, so first pass yield is something to the effect of how many of features that you developed and deployed have nearly zero defects. So for instance, you build something as part of your sprint and you submit it to quality team for testing and things, and they find 200 defects in that. That's obviously a very poor delivery. So how can you augment that? How can you make sure that you can actually reduce that 200 down to maybe 10 or even less than that? So that's first pass yield. And this also talks to saying from ideation of a feature to productionizing that feature, how much time did you actually spend? Because fixing those 200 defects, you spent number of sprint cycles versus fixing only 10 defects. So you've actually reduced that amount of time that you're spending, might I say frivolously, in some engineering activities. So how do you solve those problems? And that's kind of where measurement sort of comes in. If you have these proper measurements in place, then you would be able to more accurately say what is actually going wrong and how you can fix that. And so that would be kind of the mainstay talking point of whenever you want to adopt AI or whenever you want to adopt any new technology. You really need to be able to figure out how you're going to measure this thing correctly. And lack of that is always going to lead to problems.
Yeah. What outcome do you want to see? Yeah, I love that. So I do want to leave our group at least 10 minutes at the end. So I'm going to jump to two questions that I actually love. So I'm going to end on this. Martha, Sampath, if you guys want to answer this, give you guys a turn. Talk to me about any influencers in the AI space that you follow, whether it be somebody that you're just like, oh, they're killing it and they're so successful in this space, podcast, anything that you guys are following. Love to hear your thoughts.
So I follow Andrew Ying a lot, but the one that I love is Mogadot. He is the former COO of Google X, and he has a lot of insights on AI. And he talks a lot more about the ethical side of AI and the privacy side of AI, which I'm really in the business of because of what we do. I mean, it has a lot of great insights on it and things for us to be able to think about, like just saying thank you and please when you're inputting a request into ChatGPT or Claude or all of these different things, right? Because we're training these models for these outputs. And so he is one, he has a podcast, he has several books out. I follow him on Instagram, I follow him on X, and I think that everyone in banking, because of the relationship type that we have with our customers, I think that that's a great person to follow. And his name is Mogadot, Gawdat, I think.
His followers just went up by at least 30,
No,
I think.
he's pretty awesome, right? Because again, he has some great insights working at Google for so long. He pretty much outlines all of the challenges and what we should be thinking about, not only today, but 5-10 years from now, as it relates to privacy and ethics around how we leverage AI and how we use it.
Love it. Anybody else, quickly? Somebody that you love to follow?
I got a local guy. I don't know how famous he is, but he's actually in the room right now. Don Smith, where's your hand? Raise your hand.
Raise it.
That's
We
my
see
AI
you.
guy.
We're directing all the questions.
So that's the
to
guy.
You,
So he's not on my payroll yet, but ultimately that's the guy I always go to when I've got questions about things that I don't know enough about. So
I love it. We're ending on that because you're about to get some questions. Be ready. We might even bring you a chair up here. Thank you guys for sharing all of your experience with the group. I want to turn it over. Do we have a mic on the floor? Yeah. Would you guys mind passing that around? I want to turn it over for questions to the group. Well, you guys have the experts here. Hit them with all your questions today. Don't hit me with questions. I'm just the moderator, by the way. All right, Jared, we got one in the back. Yeah. Try again. Oh, we can bring you one. Hold on. I can multitask. Well, I don't know. This might be dangerous. Thank you.
Hello?
Hi. Okay, this is definitely on. So I actually work here on the governance team in model risk, so very familiar with a lot of the topics y'all have been talking about today. And I wrote down a few questions, but I kind of condensed them into one. And this is my colleague here. We're both on the governance team, so we've both been like scribbling down based on what you all are saying. We're very familiar with, the regulation side, very familiar as federal laws change with AI, that changes what we do at Regions. So I'm just curious from your point of view, and this is a big question. So what do you think needs to happen to bridge the gap between industry and banks? Is that something that lays in the hands of federal laws? Is that something where banks just need to get on board? So just curious how you see that issue, and it could just be time, but see that gap being bridged.
Awesome question. We actually didn't get to cover that one in my script, so I'm glad you asked.
Okay, so there are two sides to how this can go. One is you can loosen the regulation, which is going to cause a whole bunch of problems, which we really don't want to. That kind of worms we just don't want to open. But compared to what you see in the industry at large, outside of banking, the focus is about profitability. Again, even any industry, the focus is profitability. But specifically for banking, there is so many regulatory bodies looking into that, trying to sort of make certain that the customer's interests are actually put forward. Again, it's not that banks are not interested in that, but they are very interested in it. But these regulations, what they need to sort of help address or sort of describe is what's called as explainability. Model explainability is where you are able to identify what the model is doing and at the end say, this is how the model arrived at this conclusion. You're in the credit risk governance thing, so you're using models like splines and so on because they are explainable. So you're able to say the system made this decision on, let's say, someone's loan application or mortgage application and things, and you're exactly able to say if these parameters were different by this magnitude, this loan would have been approved or would have been rejected. So they're called CFEs. Those things are not possible with language models because these are black boxes. And the way these systems are built, right from AliceNet, which was, I think, in 2005, that's when that system was built. Right from then, we have not been able to understand why a language model or these complex models do what they're able to do or how they're able to do what they're able to do. So unless we are able to come up with a slightly different definition of explainability from a governance standpoint, the large-scale use of models like, let's say, ChatGPT or Gemini, that will see restricted or reduced usage in banking simply because there is no way. It's a mathematical problem that you can't solve, and something has to change. So it has to be the regulation slightly adjusting the definition of what explainable models look like. And once you're able to do that, you would have much wider adoption of these systems. And another facet to that is internally, people need to understand how they are managing risk allocation. If you're able to better define it, if you're able to identify people who are going to say, let's say from a product strategy standpoint, this is how things would normally run. This is how things would run when you implement, let's say, an AI system in there. And this is where risk can sort of be allocated to individuals, so decision makers basically. And this is how AI systems is going to help or improve that. Let's say we can reduce the time it needs to gather information or gather the right kind of information, reduce noise in that. So long as we're able to identify ways of solving that, we'd be able to improve the adoption. And again, measuring, how do you measure the success, versus just saying that the system exists. So those are the mainstay differences.
I'm going to add one thing because I've been in Washington a lot, sitting in some of the rooms where they're talking about regulation, right? And I think we just need more banks at the table because we got industry there, we got FinTechs there, but we don't have the practitioners, that's on the ground, that's there with the knowledge to say, let me put this input on what you're thinking about. Because there's no AI, regulation right now. They're trying to think about it. And now that we do have a new director or deputy director of the CFPB, they're starting to have these conversations. And so I think that it's important for the banks to be in the room to have those conversations. So that's one of the things. A resource that I'd like to give you to look at is the American FinTech Council. They are doing a lot with roundtables as it relates to trying to influence some of the AI regulations that's being talked about. There's also, and I'm sure Regions is a part of the ABA, the American Bankers Association. There's a lot of think tanks and a lot of roundtables happening with Washington as it relates to regulation. And I think that's really good for banking executives and resources to be a part of those conversations, to make sure you have your input there.
Yeah, that's great.
One more group that might be of interest is FinUs.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so there are special interest groups within FinUs that are running around AI governance, AI adoption, and so on. So I'm part of a few of those, and we're talking about some of the questions that were just posed here. How do you actually bring in these systems? How do you measure them? How can you improve adoption? How can you sort of create a framework which can be acceptable by a larger audience, basically a consortium of banks?
Do we have any other questions? I want to give others time. Yeah, go. Oh, hi. Long time no see.
I know.
I have friends in the audience.
Former boss. Real quick, I do have a startup in the city of Birmingham, and I would like to ask a question in terms of that. Since you guys have seen as your clients come in at small to medium level businesses, how do you think we can, maybe some tips about how do you think we can use AI at the beginning, right from the startup, level? How can we make our operations efficient? How can we, help kind of bring in AI right from the beginning, not just looking at an enterprise that's been there for like 50 years, 100 years, right? Thinking from a startup perspective, do you have any points that you could share with us?
I'm going to go to Brian or Martha from a startup standpoint. Any feedback there?
I mean, it really boils down to what the problem you're trying to solve is, right? Like, it always starts with the problem. And if you're trying to do something internally, again, I think over the last month, there are tools that make rapid development within, take it from months to minutes. And so if you have ideas of software to build, it's really easy to spin up a prototype of that application, if for no other reason, to put it into the hands of the person you're solving the problem for. Again, working with banks, getting adoption of newer technologies, is difficult. I'll say, how about that? I'll say it's difficult. I won't say it's impossible. I'll say it's very difficult. And I think there's a barrier to entry, a hurdle that you have to reach. Again, using an AI IDE, which essentially allows you to spin up a working application to it, if nothing else, to prove the concept. I think that's something you can do immediately, right? Like if you say, hey, instead of me spending $50,000, $100,000 to build this app over the next 6 months in several development cycles, you can do that in an hour and actually see if what your assumptions are if your assumptions are founded. So that's the way we use it.
I'd say the same, right? It depends on what you're doing and how you need to leverage it. And so to give you some of the tools that Brian is talking about, there's Replit, there's Cursor, there's Copilot, there's a lot of different things out there. I was playing around with Manus AI the other day. So there's a lot of
Wait,
things.
you got an invite to Manus?
I did, in 20 seconds.
I don't like you.
Yeah, look.
No, I love you, but I don't like you.
I got it. So it's awesome. But it allows you to kind of play with your idea and see it before you say, okay, I'm going to deploy it or actually build it. Yeah. And so there are a lot of tools out there for you to be able to do that with. So I just wanted to give you some actual tools that you can leverage.
And apparently Martha has the insider scoop. Don't go to Brian on that. So he's.
That's the truth, because
Yeah.
boy, oh boy, did I try to get access to Manus. I had to build my own version of it.
I'm going to go ahead and conclude, and let's just give a round of applause for our group today. If you have any other questions and you want to learn more, hit them up on LinkedIn, find them. I'm sure they'd be willing to connect with you guys. Dion, anything else that we need to say at the end here?
No, I think we are good. I didn't recognize the fact that Brandy is a board member. Hopefully it's okay to take an opportunity to recognize other board members that we have in the building. Also, just a round of applause for them as well. And former board members, Martha saw how I was running the organization, got the hell out of Dodge, apparently. So understood. No. Well, Jared, if we can get a picture of them
Yes.
before the end, awesome. And Sloss.tech, we have the pitch information that is up thanks to the Regions Foundation. Spread the information far and wide and get your tickets now before they go on sale to the general public. And with that said, thank you, and another round of applause for our panelists.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, you guys.